of carbohydrates. We will understand the difference between glucose and carbohydrates. Stored in plants, when you say glucose, it means glucose is an example of carbohydrate. Carbohydrate is, these are energy giving foods, né? Energy giving food, and they are basically produced from the plants. So this glucose is an example of a carbohydrate. So these plants, they have a special way how they store this glucose. So the stored form of glucose is called starch. It's like someone having money um, uh, at hand and then money in the bank. So the money in the bank might not be that useful until you remove it. Yes. So the money you get when you don't want, you have excess money, what do? You store it in the bank. So when the plant has manufactured glucose and is not going to use that glucose, it stores it in the form of starch. But if it wants the glucose back, then it will change the starch back to glucose. The same way, the same story which happens to animals. So to release oxygen into atmosphere using light. So it does not stop there. It also produces oxygen, but oxygen comes as a byproduct. It comes as a byproduct to the atmosphere. So we benefit through photosynthesis in two ways. Number one, actually three ways. Number one, by getting the glucose the plants have manufactured so that we become full and energetic. Number two, we use the oxygen the plants produce still, because to break down this food which has been manufactured, you require this energy. And then energy is produced again after breaking down. It requires energy. It's like that energy, which is a capital. And then when you put in the business, you put in some capital, then you produce more profits, and then you have a lot now. So you require energy for respiration take place, but at the end of the day, you get more energy, and then we will see the process, we will see respiration in detail. So this produces glucose, that's number one. Number two, produces oxygen, so we benefit from glucose, oxygen. Number three, we also benefit by this photosynthesis taking away the carbon dioxide we have produced in different processes, as you saw them in grade 10. So here the plants takes water from the ground, and then sunlight will come in and is being trapped. Once it's being trapped, and then carbon dioxide is produced. Once it's being produced, what happens? Then oxygen is released, and then carbohydrates are being formed. So this is the actual thing which is happening, or the process. So we're going to look at this process in detail. So what happens is this dark phase and light phase, when they are complete, you will find out that you will have what you call carbohydrate. Yes, you have what you call carbohydrate. So, but carbohydrate does not just come like that. You require carbon dioxide plus H2O, water, and then it must be in presence of light. Light must be there, and then you produce carbohydrates, which is glucose in this case. Glucose, remember carbohydrates, glucose is in the form of a carbohydrate, a monosaccharide. It's a monosaccharide. So plus the oxygen. Plants don't want this oxygen, then the oxygen is released into the atmosphere. This is stored in the form of starch, and then they can use it. So when you go and eat the plant, you're eating this starch, and then you're able to get the energy. So that's actually what is happening in the photosynthesis. Let's look at the process of photosynthesis. The process of photosynthesis occurs in the chloroplast in two phases. As I said, I have what we call the light-dependent phase, the light phase, which we call the light-dependent phase, where light is required. It means that if we don't have light, then it means that photosynthesis cannot take place. So we require the first phase, which has light, and then we require the second phase, which the first phase, which has the light, and then we require the second phase. The second phase, it must have no light, which we call the dark phase. It means that during the light phase can be taking place, and then during night, the dark phase can be taking place, because at night, there is no sunlight. So the dark phase, light independent phase, that's where no light is required, but occurs when there is light, meaning that it occurs when there is no what light. Yes. Someone can ask a question that does it mean that the light phase occurs in the light phase, and then during day, and then the dark phase occurs at night? These two, they occur, they occur concurrently, meaning that they occur, this one is occurring, the other one is also occurring. But if light goes and then the dark phase hasn't finished, it continues until it finishes. But however much light is there, it is not needed in the dark phase. Yes, it is not needed in the dark phase. It's not a must that dark phase must occur at night only. No, it occurs when the light is there, but that light is not needed. So both light phase and dark phase occur in the organelle called the chloroplast. So if they ask you that where does photosynthesis take place, it takes place in the chloroplast. Where exactly? That's where we're gonna look at where does the light phase occurs and where does the dark phase occur. We say that the light phase occurs in the thylakoid, while the dark phase occurs in the stroma. This is just a word equation of photosynthesis, that carbon dioxide plus water plus radiant energy in presence. Radiant energy is trapped by chlorophyll in presence of enzymes. You produce oxygen and the glucose. Oxygen, they can ask you what are the raw materials for the photosynthesis. Raw material is, or what is needed is this two. What is the major product of photosynthesis is glucose. The major product is glucose. What are some of the conditions chlorophyll must be present, and what is the byproduct of photosynthesis? It is oxygen. So oxygen is regarded as a byproduct. It's not meant, it's not the major, so the sole purpose of this process of photosynthesis. It just occurred because we have to produce glucose, but one of the byproduct of glucose of photosynthesis is oxygen. However much is important to our life. Yes. So step one, what happens is the sun. The sun will release this radiant energy. It will release this radiant energy. The radiant energy will be trapped by the leaf. The leaf, we have seen that the leaf has adaptations which make it to be able to trap this light. Yes. If you look at the Palisade mesophyll, we say that it is packed with the busy cells with a lot of chloroplast which trap the sunlight. And then once sunlight is being trapped, what is next? The moment sunlight is trapped, what is next? What traps light is being trapped in the grana. We say that if one is called granum, if the men we call them grana, but each of it, we call it thylakoid. So is trapped inside the thylakoids or the grana. So this light is very important. What is the function of light? Light has one function. What is the function of the light? Yes, this plant will absorb water from the soil. And then now this light will be helped to carry out a process called photolysis. Photolysis. For photolysis. photolysis. Lysis means splitting and photo means light. You are splitting using light. So it means that this light is going to help to carry out photolysis. Photolysis occurs when water is split into this, not just happening the equation just like this. It is, there is a chemical way how we can present it, but generally this is what is happening. The water is going to break down into hydrogen ions plus oxygen. Because we don't need oxygen, then oxygen will move out of the what? Of the leaf. Hence, the first product of hence the first product of glucose is the oxygen. So oxygen is released when the process of photosynthesis is just at the beginning. Hence, is not yet a major product. Now, we use this hydrogen ion, this hydrogen ion which is formed, this hydrogen ion will go to the light independent phase, which we call the dark phase. It goes to the dark phase, the light independent phase. But how does this light independent phase get this hydrogen? The light independent phase, or how does this hydrogen go to the dark phase? From the thylakoids, and then it goes to the dark phase. How does it go there? It goes there by using use of NAD, deep H. So it's NAD. So what happens is NAD, nicotine amine dinucleotide phosphate, this plus the hydrogen, nicotine NADP plus this hydrogen ion, then it forms what you call the NADH2. So basically what happens, you have the NADP, yes, plus the hydrogen ion which is formed, and then you're gonna form NADH. Yes, you can even go to H2. Yes, NADH. So that's what happens. Now this will move to the dark phase. This is NADP, so it carries this hydrogen ion and then it goes to the dark phase. It does not stop there. Also, some ATP is being produced. This ATP is then taken to the light independent phase. It's taken to the light independent phase. Yes. So this is what I'm trying to say, or what I'm trying to talk about. So that we are saying that the light dependent phase, the required radiant energy is absorbed by the chlorophyll in the grana or the thylakoids. Water is then absorbed into the grana of the chloroplast. What happens? The radiant energy, the energy which has the light which is coming from the sun will be used. The radiant energy cause the water to break down, meaning that to split. That process of water splitting into hydrogen ion plus oxygen, we call it photolysis. We call it what? Photolysis. And then now you produce hydrogen ion plus oxygen. Oxygen will move out of the leaf, and then it's being released. This oxygen is then released into the atmosphere. Yes, we have seen it via that hole we saw, which is below the leaf. Most of them that are below the leaf, which you call the stomata. So now this energy-rich hydrogen, yes, or the energized hydrogen, is then formed, or the hydrogen ion then formed during this process of photolysis is then carried by NADP, meaning that it's gonna be attached to NADP to form. So this is gonna be attached here and then forms NADPH. So now it's the NADPH which moves which moves to the dark phase. So the radiant energy causes the energy carrier ATP to be formed, meaning that this is energy-rich hydrogen and then the energy carrier. Now, the radiant energy also causes the energy carrier ATP to be formed by the process of phosphorylation. Phosphorylation. Phosphorylation, what happens? Let me show you what happens. Before it is ADP, which is adenosine diphosphate. It means that two phosphate groups. Yes. So what's gonna do is gonna add another inorganic phosphate. So it means that now I have 3 phosphate. Instead of 2, I'm gonna have 3, and 3 is called tri. So it's gonna become adenosine triphosphate, meaning that this is the energy, the usable energy we use in the body. So if you have this, compare plus this, you form this. This is the energy which we use. But this ATP cannot form unless this light is there. So the light has 2 functions. The first one is to carry out what you call photolysis, to split the water, yes, so that it forms hydrogen ion, which combines with NADP to form NADPH. And then now the second function is to make what you call the phosphorylation, to add this ADP to inorganic phosphate, so that there are 3 ATPs, there are 3 phosphates instead of 2, hence to form ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate. Then the last phase is what you call the dark phase. So that was the light phase. So what we have seen that now the inorganic phosphate combined with ADP to form ATP, ATP will enter the dark phase. And then also the hydrogen ion, energized hydrogen, will combine with NAD to form NADPH, yes, and then they also enter the dark phase. So this is what is happening. The carbon dioxide now will enter. The dark phase takes place inside the stroma, as I explained. Yes, now the carbon dioxide, that's where carbon dioxide comes in, because we have not talked about carbon dioxide. So the carbon dioxide occurs in the dark phase, while the light phase, that's where water is being used. So the carbon dioxide, which is absorbed now through the stomata, will combine with the hydrogen, which we got from the light phase, plus the ATP, which we got from the light phase, and then glucose is formed. Glucose is formed. So carbon dioxide, this carbon dioxide, what is the function of carbon dioxide? Don't forget this, that the formula of carbon dioxide, of glucose, is C6H12O6. This, we have the oxygen. Yes, from this carbon dioxide, we have the hydrogen from this, and then now what about this carbon? The carbon will also come from the carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide will help us to provide carbon, oxygen, then the hydrogen will come from the light phase, and then this process is an active process which require energy. The energy is going to be provided by this ATP, which came from the light phase, and then now glucose is what is formed. So when the glucose is formed, that glucose will have maximum energy, so that when we break it down in respiration, then we will release that energy which we have stored here. So glucose, we say that glucose is the usable form of this carbohydrate. It's like money. So when you have the money in the bank, is unusable. Yes, when you want to use it, you have to remove it from the bank using the card, whatever you use. So now here, glucose, what happens is, if it is not going to be used, is now stored as starch. So starch is the storage form of glucose or carbohydrates in plants. In animals is a different story. We shall see it when we go to nutrition. So this is the summary. Carbon dioxide enters the liver via the stomata. Stomata, we say that if one is called the stoma, in the many we call them stomata, from the atmosphere, via those holes we saw down, we call them stomata, and then carbon dioxide, and then energy-rich hydrogen atom from the light phase, as we have seen them, are combined using ATP. ATP is also from light phase, yes, and then to form carbohydrates, which we call the glucose. The excess glucose, the glucose which is not going to be used. Remember, also these plants, they require to use this glucose. This glucose is meant for them, not for us to eat. No, it's meant for them. The excess glucose will be stored in form of starch, and then where is being stored in the starch in the stroma of the chloroplast. That's why if you look at the structure of the chloroplast, you'll see the starch grains. See the starch grains in there. If you apply the iodine, that's why you see that it turns blue-black. Why? Because that leaf has what you call glucose, or not glucose, it has what you call the starch. So this is the generalized process. Step one, light is strikes the leaf. The leaf, what happens? The light is used to split the water here. Carbon dioxide is produced. So this light, which is from the sun, will split this water in the grana, and then oxygen is raised. The hydrogen will enter the dark phase, including the ATP, goes to the Kelvin cycle, and then what happens there? Carbon dioxide will come in here, and then it will combine with the hydrogen, which is being produced from the light phase using the ATP, and then the sugar is produced, which is glucose. Now the ADP, adenosine diphosphate, and the NADP plus will go back to the light phase, and then being used over and over and over again. So basically, that is the process of photosynthesis. I know that students, they have a big challenge when it comes to this process. Just in 1 minute, look at this. The differences between the light phase and the dark phase. Light phase occurs only in presence of light, as you hear the word. And then the dark phase occurs in absence of light. Light phase, it is a photochemical phase. It means that it is a process, but that process requires light. That process is being facilitated by the light. Yes. While a dark phase is a biochemical, it brings about this life. So these chemicals is biological chemicals which are happening. So it takes place in the granum. Granum, remember, is the combination of different thylakoids which form this sac, which you call the granum. And then this one takes place in the stroma. The stroma is the fluid of the chloroplast. That's where the reaction takes place of the dark phase. NADP utilizes hydrogen ion to form NADPH. And then here, the NADPH will combine with carbon dioxide to form the glucose in presence of ATP. Here, the end product is ATP and NADPH, while the other side, the NADP and ATP are being used, meaning that the end product will be glucose. Here, water will split, and then hydrogen and oxygen are being released, while here glucose is produced. Carbon dioxide is utilized in this dark phase. So when I come back, I will talk about the factors which affect photosynthesis, and then we do some experiments which we usually ask in exam about photosynthesis. Why is light necessary for photosynthesis? Why is carbon dioxide necessary for photosynthesis? The starch, all those experiments, we have to do them so that we see them, and then I show you how do we answer questions concerning about that. But don't forget, food for thought. What are some of the importance of photosynthesis? See you then in the next